Hello and welcome to Rising Earth News. I'm Lauren and I'm here today with Bill McGuire, writer, leading volcanologist and Professor of Geophysical and Climate Hazards at University College London. Thank you so much for joining me today, Bill.
You're very welcome.
Bill, your novel Skyseed explores a geoengineering experiment that unfortunately only magnifies an already catastrophic climate situation. First of all, please can you explain what geoengineering is? And as an academic in this field, how do you see the outcomes of geoengineering? Are they as bleak as you present them to be in your novel?
Well, geoengineering is the idea that we can deliberately interfere with the climate on a large scale to combat global heating and bring climate breakdown under control. Up to now, we've messed with the climate accidentally, if you like, but this is the idea that we intentionally mess about with it again. And there are two different types of geoengineering, really. One is aimed at blocking out solar radiation, so it lowers the planet's temperature that way. The other one is involved with sucking carbon directly out of the atmosphere so that we bring carbon levels down and cool the planet in that way. Generally speaking, they're not only very risky, but if you're trying to accomplish them on a global scale, they're massively expensive and also will have a huge impact on the environment. And then there are lots of legal and moral issues. Whose right is it? By whose right do we mess with the climate? On whose behalf? Who decides to undertake geoengineering? I mean, there are 7.5 billion of us. Lots of us may not want it to happen. So there isn't even a framework for whether this sort of thing can or will happen. Well, the idea of geoengineering the planet's been around for 30 or 40 years, to be honest. I mean, originally it was the plan was to use this sort of thing as a weather weapon, if you like, changing the weather over your enemy's country. So it's been around for a while, but it's beginning to gain credence and popularity, maybe over the last few years, as it looks as if we're struggling to cut emissions as we need to. So I mean, Bill Gates has just had a book out. He's one of the people that's been supporting some of these geoengineering schemes. So it tends to be physicists, engineers, supported by tech billionaires that are pushing this agenda. You won't find many climate scientists who want to mess with the climate, which really says it all, I think.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up because I think that some people, including governments, dismiss the impact of individual effort in fighting the climate crisis because they think that geoengineering will be this miracle solution that will solve all of our climate, crises. Is this the case? And if not, why is this quite a dangerous position to take?
They're always pursuing glamorous solutions, if you like. So, let's go to Mars, let's do this, let's solve climate change at a stroke by using some high-tech solution. But, as I said, they're risky, they're dangerous, and they would be hugely disruptive on a global scale. And I think the one that's captured most of the interest recently is the idea that we can mimic a volcanic eruption and in that way cool the planet down. Now, this is something I know about because I'm a volcanologist in terms of my original career. And I know from past experience that very large volcanic eruptions, which pump a lot of gas and dust into the atmosphere that cools things down, some of these eruptions have caused massive cooling afterwards. They've caused harvest failure on almost on a global scale. They've caused the return of snow and ice, all sorts of things. So the idea that we're going to deliberately pretend to be a volcano, if you like, and bring the planet and bring climate change under control that way is really a very silly way to go. And I think something people don't understand here is that the rate at which our planet is warming is probably unprecedented in the whole history of our planet. It's probably never been seen before. The last time temperatures rose very, very rapidly was about 55 million years ago, something called the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum. Temperatures now, actually, a point I should make is there were crocodiles in Arctic and palm trees in Siberia during that period. It was so hot. But temperatures now are rising at a rate 8 times faster than they were then. So, it's staggering. We are in such a precarious situation, which I don't think many people realize at all. We don't want to scare people in one sense, but in another sense, you have to tell people how bad it is, because unless people realize how serious the situation is, they're not going to respond appropriately. So, there's no point playing things down and saying they're not as bad as you think, because they are very, very bad indeed. One of the worst things about geoengineering is that if we think it's a possible solution, it means we won't be putting all our efforts into cutting emissions as the science demands. And the way I look at it is, if you're fighting to protect the city and your family's in the city, you will fight a lot harder in the last line of defense than if you're in the second to last line of defense. So if heads of government and others think, oh, if we don't get emissions under control, we can always resort to geoengineering, then they're never going to put in the effort that's really needed to get to net zero carbon, very, very soon. We need to do this in the 2030s, really. But there's absolutely no evidence that any of this will work, and it will be just hugely disruptive, even if it isn't dangerous. And to be honest, getting everybody to agree to geoengineering is going to be just as difficult as getting everybody to agree to cut emissions by a particular amount. So it doesn't help.
What are the alternatives to geoengineering methods?
I mean, geoengineering sometimes is broadened out to look not at just technical things that we can do, but also natural things. And so some people regard massive afforestation, massive planting of trees, as a form of geoengineering. Now, if it is, it's a form which I completely agree with, because we can't have enough trees. I think there were originally something like 12 trillion trees on the planet. We've cut half of them down already. And that's madness. There is actually a geoengineering scheme to build artificial trees, 10 million of them, to suck carbon out of the atmosphere. And I look at that and think, are you bonkers? We're cutting down billions of trees every year. You want to plant some other ones while we're doing that. Just stop cutting down trees, plant as many as possible. I think it was in Ethiopia, wasn't it, a few years ago, they planted something over 300 million trees in a day. So this sort of colossal tree planting is possible, and it's hugely important. I mean, we need to be cutting emissions as well. So, the development of renewables, particularly reductions in things like flying, which the COVID pandemic has helped with temporarily anyway. We can do all these different things, but we need to, at the same time, be not only stopping forests being cut down, but planting new ones.
Alongside your esteemed academic career, you're also a father to 2 young boys. Where do you get your hope from, and how do you stay positive for your family, knowing the things about the climate crisis that you know?
Well, I've written books about natural catastrophes and natural disasters sort of for much of my career, and I've worked on active volcanoes and in other dangerous areas. So I'm always aware of what the Earth can be like, how dangerous it is, and with climate change, particularly how we have something happening that can affect every one of us. So my tendency is to educate my kids in terms of what the future might be like, how they might best approach it. And in fact, the 17-year-old now is already a climate activist amongst all sorts of other political activism. I mean, I've brought them up to understand what the situation is, understand that it's quite possible that their lives may be harder than ours. In fact, that's distinctly possible. But I'm hoping I've given them the knowledge and skills to be able to cope with that.
How can people find out more about the work you do?
Well, I've got a website which links to most of my articles and various other publications. That's billmcguire.co.uk. And I've recently started a newsletter or blog called Cool Earth, which is on a platform called Substack. It's a newsletter platform, and people can sign up to that for free. And then as my articles are published, wherever they're published, they'll all go on that, and those will be sent automatically to people by email, so they can then read everything as it comes out. We launched a science oath of the climate a few months ago, which climate scientists particularly, can sign up to, saying, I'm not just going to talk about the science, I'm going to act as I'm suggesting other people act as well. So if people go to the website of Scientists for Global Responsibility, they can sign up to that.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Bill. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Rising Earth News. Don't forget to subscribe and follow our socials for your daily dose of positive eco news. Stay safe, stay green, and be a part of the age of restoration.